6 years ago, I made a video on my YouTube channel talking about how I became a licensed marriage and family therapist. I talked about my education, training, how I made decisions on what school to go to, how I made decisions on which specific degree to pursue. That video still gets a lot of views and a lot of comments, and actually emails all the time asking more questions or asking for further support. I offer mentorship for therapists who are in the beginning stages of their career trying to figure it all out, because I wish that I had that at the beginning. But that video is 6 years old, so I wanted to do an updated video on everything that's happened since then. If you're new here, my name is Melissa Tablada. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist based in Miami, Florida. I've been married for almost 7 years. We have 2 children and another one on the way. And I have my own solo private practice that I run. Solo meaning I'm the only clinician. I'm not part of a group and I don't have any therapists working under me. I see clients all over the state of Florida from my home office that's just a few feet away from my babies. So in between clients, I can run and hug them and snuggle them and help them get snacks and help them go for a nap and just bounce back and forth between being a clinician and doing what I love professionally and doing what I love the most, which is serving my family and being a present wife and mom. So if this is something that you hope to one day be doing, this is why I want to share my story, because I always loved hearing people's journeys, people's stories that were a few steps ahead of me. How did they get to that point? Because if I am aspiring to be there, I want to know what steps they took that helped them get to the place that I one day want to be. So I hope that me sharing my story can support you in your own journey as you're becoming or continuing to become a licensed therapist. So just to recap, if you didn't see that first video, I'll link it down below, but I graduated from Nova Southeastern University in the summer of 2017 with my master's in marriage and family therapy. It's really common for new grads to work in either an agency or an in-home counseling setting, and it just was not something that I was excited about or looking forward to. It's actually something like really, at least in my university and experience, it was really highly recommended, and people often talked about it as if it was a necessary first step, as if you couldn't become a good therapist without going through that experience first. And first of all, I just didn't feel comfortable doing the in-home experience thing. I had heard some horror stories, honestly, and I know that it's a gift to people that need it, but it just was something that I never felt called to. So I just want to reassure anyone who's not really looking for that experience, you don't have to do agency or in-home work right out of grad school. It is maybe the more common option, but you don't have to do that. You can pursue other options right out of grad school. I always wanted to work in private practice. That was always my goal. And so I wanted to get into private practice as soon as possible so that I could start getting experience and learning how to be in private practice. My first job after graduation was in a agency that did school counseling. The agency was called Catapult Learning, and the Catapult contracted with the local K-8 schools to send in tutors as well as counselors for services for the students. And so I worked there for 2 years from August 2017, and then I did 2 complete school years, and I worked in various schools. I maybe worked in like 4 or 5 different schools a few days a week, or sometimes it would change based on the needs of the school. Now, I never really wanted to work with children as a counselor. It wasn't something I ever felt necessarily called to. I love children. I want to have lots of them, and I love being around them. But as a counselor, I just didn't feel called to it. I didn't feel like it's where my gifts were. I didn't feel very skilled in it. I also had barely any experience in it or training. In my marriage and family therapy program, there was a play therapy class, and I didn't take it because I didn't intend on working with children. So I really didn't have a lot of training. It didn't feel well prepared for that job. I got training and experience through that, but it just was something that I didn't plan on continuing. I also found myself continuously frustrated because when I would work with the children, I found myself realizing that I really needed to be working with their parents if lasting, bigger picture change was going to happen for that child. And the parents weren't my clients, and I didn't have a lot of interactions with the parents during that experience. Also, in the middle schools that I worked in, there was a lot of suicidality, suicidal ideation, and a lot of Baker acting, unfortunately, that I needed to do to keep the kids safe. And that's just a lot. It was heavy, and it wasn't something that I wanted to be doing on a day-to-day basis. Thank God I had great supervisors during that time, because I was still an intern during that time. Once you graduate from a master's degree, you're an intern, depending on your state, but in Florida, you're an intern for about 2 years. You have to do 1,500 client contact hours, so like therapy sessions with clients, and then I think it's 500 supervision hours. Now it's been a number of years, so I don't remember exactly. I definitely said it in the last video. But I think it's 1,500 client contact hours in Florida and 500 supervision hours. So I had a great supervisor that was supporting me during this whole season. So I started working in the schools in August 2017, and then by October 2017, I had already gotten hired at my first group practice, which was so exciting, and I was really excited to dive into private practice because that was my dream. That's what I wanted to do, and that's the setting that I wanted to work in. So what I would do is go to the school and work from 8 to 3, and then go to private practice and see clients in private practice from like 4 until 7 or 8 in the evening. I planned to continue doing that kind of crazy workload and schedule until I had built up my private practice caseload enough to feel comfortable leaving the school and going full-time in private practice. You don't have to do this, especially if you have the flexibility to not need a full-time income in the beginning. That is awesome, and you can just work on building your private practice caseload. It also doesn't take a super long time to build up a caseload if you're solely focused on that and you learn really good sales and marketing, which is really important in private practice, which unfortunately when you're studying therapy, you often don't get training in these really necessary aspects, which I really wish they would do a little bit more business training in grad school. I know there was a private practice course that my grad school offered that I didn't take because I just heard it wasn't of super high value, so I didn't end up taking it, but I may have learned a few things in that class that would have been helpful. So I was only working at that group practice for a couple of months before I got an email from a woman named Betsy. Betsy had seen my profile on that group practice website, and she saw that I was a Christian faith-based therapist, and she only worked a few miles down the road, and her caseload was full, and she had a wait list, and she was looking for other clinicians in the area to refer to so that her wait list wasn't taking so long for these people to be seen by a therapist. So she was looking for similar-minded therapists close by that could see clients if she was unable to see them. She wanted someone that she trusted to refer to. So she invited me to lunch at her office, and she had reached out around the holidays. So a few months went by before we finally got together. I think it was around February of 2018. So I was just about to get married. I got married in April of 2018, and I went to her office for lunch, and we sat down to eat, and we both did the sign of the cross before we ate our food, and we both looked at each other and realized like, oh, both of our websites said Christian faith-based therapist. And so we both assumed that the other was non-denominational Protestant, not Catholic. And as soon as we both did the sign of the cross, we were like, oh. And it was just nice to know that we were like fully aligned in our faith. Even more of a reason to be able to refer back and forth. And we went on to find so many similarities and so many things in common. One thing that had changed from the time she reached out to me to the time we got together to me, she had taken over her lease for her office space. And so now she had like 5 offices, I want to say, that she had taken over, but she was only herself as a therapist. And so now things had changed from her looking for therapists to refer to her looking for therapists to work under her in her group that she was just starting to establish. I think I was working there by the end of the month. It was just a perfect fit. I loved her. I learned so much from her, and the time that I spent working in her office was incredibly invaluable to me, my life, myself, my own formation and growth, and my career. So I continued doing my school counseling. This was now 2018. So through the year of 2018 and through the year of 2019, I continued doing my school counseling, and then I would work at Betsy's. I learned so much from being in her office, especially the business side of things. How to run a private practice, the administrative side. What does sales and marketing even mean? How to set goals in business, and how to be a good ethical therapist and still have a business mindset, because if you're gonna run a private practice, you're running a business. So you have to have that mindset, and you have to know how to run a business. There were a number of other clinicians that worked in that office, and I loved them. We came to be really good friends. It was so fun. It was so encouraging. We grew together. We laughed together. It was so fun to see them in the office. The office was beautiful. In between sessions, we would sit and have a snack and catch up, and it was such a nice and beautiful season of life. There were some things that challenged me about working there in that office, and one of the things was the rate that they charged for services. I was a baby therapist, new, freshly out of grad school, didn't have a ton of years of experience. I had barely had 1 year of experience out of grad school by the time I started working there. And so I felt insecure about my worth, and I felt uncomfortable with what we were charging clients. I didn't know if I was worth charging that. I didn't know if they would get what they deserved if they were paying that much for therapy. And so one of the things that I did to kind of navigate through that time, a number of things. One was like really working on understanding the value that I brought to the table, the experience that I had, the training that I had, the education that I had, and learning to trust that I actually did have something solid, evidence-based to bring to the table when I was coming as a therapist with my clients. But another thing that helped me so much is I started working at another group practice. So I had left the first one, I was working at Betsy's and the school, and then I started working at a third location, which was my second group practice. Now my third group practice overall, but the second at the same time. And the reason I started working there, number one, was to just gain more hours. I was seeing a lot more clients. They had a high number of clients being referred from local hospitals and local schools, and they were using insurance. And so their rate was much lower and my rate was much lower. And so at that office, I was only making $25 an hour as a therapist, post-grad, and I knew that I was worth more than $25 an hour. But I didn't quite know if I was worth $150 to $200 an hour. So that was happening at the same time. I would go see 6 clients and I was only making $25 an hour, and then I would go to my other office and be making $150 to $200 an hour. And it was like this very interesting learning experience, but I was at that second office for maybe about a year. And by the time I finished there, I felt super confident that I had the experience. I saw so many different types of people, so many things that they were struggling with. I had the experience, I had more time under my belt, I had more trainings, and I just had a lot more confidence in who I was as a therapist and the value that I was providing. I saw so many clients through the entire process of their therapy treatment. From start, where they came in, where they were really struggling, what their goals were, through the end of their time in therapy where they had successfully reached their goals, which helped me to feel a lot more confident in the services that I was offering and the rates that I was charging for those services. So there was a point where I was at the school, I was at Betsy's, and I was at that other practice. I would go to the school and work from 8 to 3. I would go to one of the private practices and work from like 4 to 8. And this was in the beginning of my marriage, so I was getting home late, but it was fine. We knew it was so temporary. It was not going to be a long-term plan. It was just to build the private practice caseload in the meantime before I felt comfortable leaving the school. We knew it was temporary and it would be totally worth it in the end, which it absolutely was. By the end of 2019, I had left my school job. I didn't start that new school year, so I left the school job mid-2019, and then by the end of 2019, I had also left the second group practice. So I was only at Betsy's and I had a full caseload and everything was going great. By this time I had already started using social media. I opened my public social media accounts after I got married in the beginning of 2018. I was marketing myself and I was pretty much bringing in all of my own clients. I wasn't getting many referrals from the office because I was doing a good job marketing myself on social media and through word of mouth, local churches, and speaking engagements. And so while I always wanted to be in private practice, I never really had the specific concept that I was going to start my own practice. I was so happy working in Betsy's office and I would have continued working there forever. But just over time, it became more apparent that it made more sense for me to be on my own in my own practice. And so by March of 2020, I left Betsy's office and started my own practice. The timing is really interesting of that because if I say March 2020, what do you think of? COVID. I left a stable job. I left a salary-paying agency job with the school. Then I left a stable private practice job where somebody else was running the show, started my own practice, and then the whole entire world shut down. But interestingly, that had no negative impact on my work. If anything, people needed more support with their mental health. And so my caseload was growing, but we were in lockdown in the beginning. And my husband also had to work from home. And we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment at the time. And you can't just be sharing the same space with somebody else if you're a therapist because, hello, confidentiality, HIPAA. So I would lock myself in the bathroom of our 1-bedroom apartment and my backdrop was a shower curtain. My poor clients during that time, but you know, we were all going through COVID at the same time. We were all just on the journey together. So it was a really interesting first few months of private practice, but praise God, it was going really well and I was able to support my clients from my bathroom And thankfully, I'm no longer working in a bathroom. Once things opened back up again during COVID, I started renting space in Betsy's office because I was no longer part of her group, but I did intend to be in the office seeing clients. And so once things opened back up and we could go back to the office, I went back to the office, I would rent space from her and I would see my clients there. That went on until my son, my first baby, was born in April of 2021. And then I decided it's actually working really well for me to see my clients remotely. Most of my clients preferred to stay remote once COVID hit. And so I decided to go full telehealth after he was born so that I could balance both being home with the kids and seeing clients. I don't do both at the same time. If I'm seeing clients, my kids are either with my mom or my husband or a babysitter. Absolutely 0% can do both at the same time. No. So since March 2020, I've had my own solo practice. Since April 2021, I've been fully remote, telehealth only. I've had my own practice for 5 years now, and I've been in practice as a clinician seeing therapy clients post-grad for 8 years. That's crazy. And I've been fully remote for 4 years now. What a journey. The only marketing tool I use is social media. There have been times where I've had things like Psychology Today. I just didn't find it super beneficial for me. Most of my clients are finding me through social media, primarily Instagram, and word of mouth through past clients, especially now that I've been in practice for so many years, past clients, local churches, and speaking engagements. I originally set out thinking I only wanted to work with couples. I was going to be a marriage therapist and work with couples and help people save their marriages, and that was it. That lasted a very short amount of time because couples are a lot of work. And what also I found frustrating was that statistically, couples will wait 6 years from the time that they realize that there's an issue until the time that they seek professional support. That's a long time, and often one of the people are already checked out mentally by then, and so it was really difficult. I found such a sweet spot working with Catholic young adult women who were in this season of growth and understanding and processing their family of origin, unhealthy patterns of living and habits and relating to others that they learned in their upbringing, and wanting to relearn healthier ways of living and relating to others for their current life and relationships and for the sake of their future marriages and their children and their friendships and everything else. And I loved that. And it also felt very proactive for the couples who I was working with too. If I could start working with people maybe before they were in that crisis marital situation, if we all work on ourselves as individuals proactively, that's gonna benefit our marriages, and hopefully our marriages don't get to a point of crisis. I still do work with both. I see couples, I see individuals, and sometimes teens, but primarily couples and individual adults. It's such beautiful work. It's such holy work. I am so honored and feel so privileged to have this role, to get to walk with people and hear and witness to some of the hardest parts of their life and help them on their journey of healing and growth. It's beautiful. It's a gift. So that's it. That's the updated story. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm sure there's plenty of things I forgot to cover. Ask the questions in the comments down below. And like I mentioned in the beginning, if you're a new baby therapist in the field and you have lots of questions and you'd like to talk to somebody in a mentorship capacity, I do offer one-on-one mentorship. So just shoot me an email. I'll put the link to reach out below. Email me, we'll chat. It's one of my absolute favorite things to do, is support therapists in their journeys, in their careers, becoming therapists and getting to the point where they want to be, where they're living a life that is fulfilling and beautiful, and they're able to balance family life and the therapy world in a way that feels healthy and fulfilling. Thank you for watching. God bless you. I'll see you in the next video.